2, 1.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the 15th Oklahoma Transition Institute virtual meeting. It's our 15th annual Oklahoma Institute hosted by the Oklahoma Transition Council. Before we get started, here's some Zoom tips. This training is being recorded for participants to access after the event. You have 2 days in which to view closed captioning. 1, the closed caption icon will appear on the bottom black bar of your screen. Click to show captioning along bottom of screen. It might also say show subtitle. You may also view more lines on the transcript by selecting View Transcript. This will take place of the chat, so you would need to click on the chat to go back to it. So you see the closed captioning is available down at the bottom, circled in the yellow. Show subtitle, full transcript, subtitle settings. Number 2, on the black bar, click on More with and choose closed captioning as you see there. After selecting closed caption, you will see the captioning at the bottom of your screen. When closed captions are in use, you will see transitions. Before we get started, Zoom tips optional. If you need to adjust the caption size, click on the arrow next to the Stop Start video and choose Video Settings. Click on Accessibility, move to the slider to adjust the caption size. Before we get started, here's some more Zoom tips. ASL interpreters are present. To ensure they are visible, you may pin videos by hover over the video of the interpreters, click on the 3 dots, and then pin video, or clicking on participants, then more, next to the name you see starting with interpreter and pin video, or as you see your examples. Audio. Make sure your computer or headphone set speakers are turned on and the volume is adjusted to your preference. Everyone's microphones have been muted. Mute, unmute yourself. Please ensure that you stay muted. Please ensure you stay muted when not speaking. Click unmute to speak during QA. PC users click Alt-A. Mac users shift Option A. Start video, stop video. You may choose to have your video on throughout the training. If you have bandwidth issues, please turn off your video. Click on the microphone to mute. If you have the red line on your screen, you are muted. Chat window. Type in the chat to share your questions and insights to let us know if you're having any technical difficulties. Click on the panel list of attendees to send your message to everyone. Click a specific attendee to send a private message to an individual. You are in control of your viewing experiences in Zoom, but we have some recommendations below for the best experience. Exit full screen mode. Top right button or view options drop down menu. Enable side-by-side mode. View options drop down menu. Click on speaker view to only see the current presenter's video, or gallery view to see videos of all participants. Top right button. Click on the chat after exiting full screen mode to pin to the right side of the screen. Other informations, questions. Please type your questions in the chat box throughout the presentation. If time allows, presenters will also field questions at the end of their sessions while allowing participants to unmute their microphones. Technical issues. If you experience technical issues in Zoom, please type in the chat to let us know the challenge you are having, or email the email address as shown to let her know the challenge. Evaluation and CRCS for our VR staff. All participants will receive an email at the end of the day on 9/30/2020. Once you submit your online evaluation, you will be able to print certificates for each day. If you are a certified rehabilitation counselor and want to request after the OTI, follow these steps. Please email Lashar Thomas at that email address. I sent a screenshot of the message on the screen after you hit submit on your online evaluation, the accompanying certificates, and a list of sessions you attended. Thank you to our sponsors. And now I'm going to turn it over to Shelley Gladen with Able Tech.
Hey, good morning, everyone. I'm Shelley Gladden with Oklahoma Able Tech. For those of you that are not familiar, Oklahoma Able Tech is the state's Assistive Technology Act program. We are charged with the mission to help individuals get access to and acquisition of assistive technology. As you can see on the screen, we offer a variety of services from consultations, device demonstrations, device short-term loans, funding options for assistive technology, reutilization of durable medical equipment and assistive technology, financial loans for assistive technology, accessibility training, AT consideration training workshops in collaboration with the State Department of Education, variety of e-news, webinars, videos, and online curriculum related to assistive technology consideration and implementation in the IEP in the classroom. So I don't want to take up a whole lot of time. I just wanted to say I'm really excited to be here as a sponsor for the 15th annual OTI, and in particular, really excited to be the sponsor for this particular session. As you're learning about the individual career academic planning, ICAP, and transition planning for students with disabilities, please keep assistive technology in your mind and let us know how Able Tech can assist with that. So with that, I am excited to turn it over to Lori Chestnut and Dr. Mallory Deerdorf, and look forward to the great session we have.
Thank you so much, Shelley. Thank you everyone for being here this morning for our transition planning and individual career and academic planning. So this morning we're going to show you how the individual career and academic planning can work with the transition plan in the IEP. Again, my name is Lori Chestnut, and I am the Secondary Transition Specialist with the Oklahoma State Department of Education Special Education Services. And prior to coming to OSDE, I was a special education teacher.
Good morning. I'm Dr. Mallory Deerdorf. I am the Assistant Director at the Zero Center, which is at the University of Oklahoma. I see many familiar faces and names on this Zoom meeting. I'm so glad you all are joining us today.
So our agenda this morning, we are going to talk about the Individual with Disabilities Education Act, the transition mandates in IDEA. Then we will go over transition assessment and transition planning, individual career and academic planning. We'll just talk about the basics. And then we'll talk about how ICAP looks for students with disabilities. And then finally, how to incorporate the ICAP into the secondary transition plan. So we want to tell you up front, this is a lot of information in a short amount of time, but this session will be recorded and posted so you can go back and view it later, and also reach out to us if you have questions.
I made sure that my cell phone was muted, but not the office phone, so I apologize for that little interruption there. So I'm going to kind of start us off with some transition laws and mandates just to refresh you, or maybe this is brand new information. And like Lori said, we're just kind of giving you a brief introduction to this. Lori and I've talked, we could probably present on this stuff for a whole week. So I like to talk really fast when I get excited, and I'm very passionate about this. So I will try to make sure that I'm going through this a little bit slower and not getting too involved in this. So First off, we have our Individuals with Disabilities Education Act that was in 2004, was the last time that it was updated, but it had some very important information as far as transition planning. And so these are some basic mandates that were explained in IDEA. And so these are parts that make up the transition plan. So we have the present levels of academic and functional performance, which sometimes we see on the very front page of an IEP, but then it also occurs within the transition plan. And so we have capitalized functional there because that is definitely where our transition skills are housed. There's also a mandate that includes the use of age-appropriate transition assessments, which lead us to post-secondary goals in education, training, and employment, as well as independent living goals as needed. And then we have annual transition goals or annual goals related to transition, coordinated activities. Sometimes those are referred to as transition services, and IDEA actually says both, coordinated sets of activities or transition services. And then we have the course of study, so which courses students are going to take while they're in high school to promote their lives outside of high school. There's also a mandate about student and agency participation within IDEA. It says that IEP teams must invite the student to the IEP meeting when they turn transition age. So in some states that is 14 and some that is 16. Here in Oklahoma, we say, you know, before the age of 16 or upon entering 9th grade, whichever comes first. So most of our students are not quite 16 when they enter the 9th grade. So we like to just kind of stick with that 9th grade. But we have to invite our students upon that age, and they don't have to attend, but it is encouraged. We have to account for students' interest in their transition planning. And so if they are there, they're able to provide their own input about their interests and preferences, but we also can use our transition assessments to gauge that as well. And then we also have to invite a representative from any participating agency that is likely to provide transition services to a student. We have to have prior consent for that, and that's just the form on EdPlan that is used for consent for information. And so we have to have parents sign off on that agency member to participate in the meeting. And they must be invited, but they do not have to attend. So that kind of leads us into transition assessments, which I could probably talk to you all day about. But we have some best practice recommendations for using transition assessments. So transition assessments are supposed to be an annual process, just like we would use math and reading assessments. We want to make sure that we are assessing transition skills at least once a year. And we want to use a variety of age-appropriate transition assessments as well. So that means 2 or more, not just one transition assessment, but more than one. And age-appropriate means that we're not using a first grade reading assessment or a first grade adaptive skills assessment for a student who is in 10th or 11th grade, because we want this to be age-appropriate. We want to make sure that we are assessing them on skills that other 11th and 10th grade students might have. We need to make sure that those transition assessments are updated annually. That does not necessarily mean that you use the same transition assessment every year, but that we are actually giving transition assessments every year. And then we like to say to use at least one formal assessment. And a formal assessment means that it has validity or reliability evidence behind its use. Is this assessment actually measuring what it is supposed to measure? Is it designed for students with disabilities? Is it designed for students that are transition age? So those are some questions to ask when you think about, is this assessment formal or not? So some additional transition planning requirements. In the case laws that have happened and the court cases that have happened in the last 15 years, some of them have dealt with monitoring progress towards transition goals. It's pretty commonplace to measure progress towards math and reading goals, but we also need to make sure that we're doing that for our transition goals. So using those transition assessments is a way for us to make sure that we're pinpointing the appropriate goals for students and that we're able to monitor if they're making progress in those goals. And then also we need to plan for that student involvement in our transition planning meetings and in our IEP meetings. And sometimes that means that we're instructing students on skills so that they're able to do, that they're able to participate in their meeting and they're able to express their interests and preferences in their IEP meetings.
All right, next we're going to talk about the individual career and academic planning, commonly referred to as ICAP. Hopefully by now you've heard of ICAP, but it's still, we're 3 years in, but it's still, you know, a concept that we're just kind of starting to be familiar with. So basically an ICAP is a transition plan for all students, general education as well as special education. So it is a multi-year process, and in Oklahoma, that's going to start in at least in 9th grade. So it's all about intentionally guiding our students to explore their career, academic, and post-secondary opportunities. There's a big push for student involvement, and they lead that process and include the family with support from educators. So it's all about our students creating their own meaningful pathways to be college and career ready so that they see the purpose to what they're doing in high school, and it's going to help them after they get out of high school. So what is college and career readiness? That means that our students graduate from high school with the skills that they need to be successful, whether they're going to college or career tech or straight into the workforce. They're going to have the skills they need to succeed. So the ICAP is mandated by House Bill 2155. We started piloting it in 2017. It was piloted for 2 years. And then last year, the 2019-2020 school year, as crazy as a school year as we had last year, that was the first year that it was mandated for all 9th grade students. Some districts did it, you know, started it as early as middle school or even in elementary. So now the class of 2023 must have participated in an ICAP as part of their graduation requirements. Students with disabilities, there's some wording in the legislation that for students with disabilities, the ICAP shall take into account and work in cooperation with the student's individualized education program or Section 504 plan. So they must remain separate documents because they're separate, you know, they're mandated by separate legislation, but parts of the ICAP will be integrated into the transition plan of the IEP, and that's what we're going to show you this morning, what that looks like. So an ICAP has to include career and college interest surveys, post-secondary and workforce goals, as well as progress towards those goals, intentional sequence of courses that reflect progress towards those goals, students' academic progress, including courses taken, test scores, and remediation, advanced placement, concurrent enrollment credits, certifications, all of those things can be included. And then a big, and in my opinion, the most important part is that experience in service learning and or work environment activities. So we really want our students out in the community getting those opportunities to participate in work-based learning as much as possible. And I know that's challenging during the pandemic, but that's really what we're striving for. So why ICAP? I don't know if any of you had a chance to attend OTI last year, but Scott Solberg was our keynote speaker. And in his research, he found that the reason many schools failed to demonstrate improvement in academic outcomes and test scores is because students failed to see how their academic courses are relevant or beneficial to their future quality of life. And really, if ICAP is implemented the way that it's designed to be, it does have the power to change this. I cannot emphasize the importance that you play in the ICAP. You know, we know that our students, it's all about those relationships, and our students need a supportive adult, at least one, hopefully they have more, but they need access to a caring and supportive adult who maintains the highest expectations for their potential. And that's really the key to ICAP success. So each district has an ICAP tool. So most districts participate with either the OK Career Guide, that's through our career technology systems, or the OK College Start, that's the Regions for Higher Education. But some other districts have elected to have a different ICAP tool, but those are the two most common ones. We also have the OSDE Connect that has some modules, different types of learning modules for ICAP, and then we have the Oklahoma Edge, that you can go on there and anything there's toolkits for implementing ICAPs, there's resources for students and parents. It's really anything to do with ICAP, and that was set up by our ICAP team. So ICAP's going to look different. We have over 550 districts in Oklahoma. I don't know the exact number right now, but it's up there. So, you know, depending on whether you're in an urban district or suburban or rural, it's going to look a little different, but regardless of what it looks like, it needs to be student driven. The responsibility of implementing the ICAP is on the student and the family and the district. And it could include counselors, teachers, principals, and other school staff. Our students with disabilities, you know, may need additional supports. We can't just say, hey, you need to do this ICAP, do it before you graduate. Good luck with that. We have to be able to provide the support that they need to be able to complete their ICAP. We also have access in some of our school districts to pre-employment transition specialists or career tech staff or other community partners, including business partners. And those individuals may serve as a supportive role in the implementation of the ICAP, but ultimately the responsibility is going to fall on the district and the student and families. Okay, so let's talk about what the ICAP looks like for students with disabilities and how it works with the transition plan. So we want our students with disabilities to participate in the ICAP just like everyone else. We have over about 75 to 80% of our students with disabilities that are in the general education setting for more than 80% of the time. So we want to make sure that they are included in all processes and activities that happen with the ICAP. Again, I mentioned earlier, it looks a little different in different districts. It seems to be the districts that have set aside an intentional time for ICAP, such as an advisory period, you know, where the schedule changes and there's intentional time to work on ICAP, seem to be having the most success. So we want our students with disabilities to be included in that. We want our special ed teachers to be included on ICAP district teams. Again, students with IEPs may need some appropriate accommodations and modifications to be successful. And the IEP team is going to document those, any of those necessary accommodations and modifications on the IEP, and you can use the custom accommodations and ed plan to document those. So the ICAP and the IEP are complementary. An IEP team should take information gathered during the ICAP process into account when developing transition services. So you can incorporate the assessments. We want to see alignment with the goals, the course of study, and transition services. Assessments that are completed as part of the ICAP process may be used to inform the IEP, and it may satisfy the requirements for the age-appropriate transition assessments in the areas of education, training, and employment if determined by the IEP team. Again, that's going to depend on the students that you work with and their levels of functioning. We want to make sure that we are considering and assessing our students in the areas of self-determination, independent living, and community participation. Because the ICAP's not going to cover, you might get into a little independent living with some of your assessments, but those are designed mostly for education, training, and employment. Another thing we need to think about is accessibility for students and staff. I'm so glad that we had Shelley with Able Tech here this morning, and she mentioned the importance of assistive technology. I cannot emphasize that enough. We've already heard of some, issues with accessibility for some of our students when they're trying to take those online assessments. So we have to determine, can they access it? Do they need assistive technology? And if it's not working, we have to find some additional assessments. What I mean by for the staff accessibility is that if the special education, like for our students that are in special ed more, special ed teacher may not even be aware that students have participated or taken some, the career guide or the assessments. So we want to make sure that our special ed staff has access to our students, the results from those career interest inventories and skill interest inventories. Okay, we are getting a lot of questions. What does the ICAP look like for students who are participating in the Oklahoma Alternate Assessment Program, or the OAAP? So this is for our students with the most significant support needs. So the IEP team may use appropriate transition assessments in place of the assessments in the OK Career Guide or OK College Start, whatever your district is using for ICAP tool. So for example, the career interest inventory that's in OK College Start, and OK Career Guide, there's a lot of questions, there's a lot of reading. Even with accommodations, you may determine for students with OAAP, it's just not appropriate. And maybe you're going to use a pictorial career interest inventory in place of the one that's in one of the tools. And that's perfectly acceptable. The IEP team can determine what's appropriate for the students. We've kind of gone back and forth on this one, but we still are recommending that students still have an account in the district's preferred electronic portfolio system, but that's ultimately going to be up to the district and to the IEP team to determine whether that's appropriate. But we still recommend it because there may be some activities inside those systems that your students could still participate in. Again, so that's going to be up to you. If the IEP team determines otherwise, they don't have to have an account and be housed, but we do recommend it. We also have the recommendation that the special education teacher who is assisting the student with the assessments should complete the secondary transition assessments for students with moderate to significant disabilities. And that is a PEPR module that's located within OK Ed Plan. So we, regardless of the levels of functionings for students, they still must participate in transition assessments annually. So if you need some ideas for what assessments they should take, there's wonderful resources within that module. So we recommend that teachers familiarize themselves with those assessments.
Okay, so we're going to show you an example of how to use the transition plan and ICAP as a complementary tool, and so that they complement each other and they can be used together. And Lori kind of touched on this a little bit. For our students with disabilities, they get both. They get a transition plan and they get an ICAP. And it's like 2 layers of support for them to help them achieve their life goals after high school and education and employment. So this is a wonderful way to get everybody involved in that student's trajectory after high school. And so we have their transition plan, which is usually their special educator and some of the IEP team members working on, but this ICAP gives the ability for other people to interact with that student and help them accomplish their goals. So our example is revolving around Selena Gomez. You might know her or might know of her. And this is a picture of a young Selena Gomez. She was about like 14 in this picture. But Selena is a 16-year-old freshman at Owasso High School. Selena's recent psychological testing states that she has an IQ of 75. And Selena qualifies for special education under the category of traumatic brain injury. You may not have a student that's exactly like Selena, but you might have a student that is similar to her. And so let me get to some of the other things about her, and then you can kind of start making those connections to maybe a student that you serve. So she attends inclusion classes for science and math, but she attends lab classes for her English language arts and her social studies. She communicates verbally, but her speech is slow and sometimes hard to understand. A little bit more information about Selena on this next slide. So Selena can walk, however, she cannot stand for long periods of time. She enjoys listening to music and she likes to dance. She's a social butterfly and enjoys the company of her peers like Justin Bieber or Nicki Minaj. She recently took a trip to the beach with her family this summer and would love to live near it someday. So this is just some general information that I know about Selena. This is not information that I gained from any type of assessment. This is just what maybe her special education teacher knows and some information that her general education teachers provided and maybe her parents and maybe herself. And so this is not really very formal, but this is a great picture of Selena. But in order for us to determine what her transition needs are, we need to be starting with some transition assessments. So we're going to give Selena the OK Career Guide assessment, so to kind of gauge what her interests are as far as employment. Then we're going to give her the transition assessment and goal generator, and then the employability life skills assessment. So for the ICAP, the only thing that she's going to have to take to formulate her goals, workforce and education goals, is the OK Career Guide. And so we say, feed two birds with one scone here and use that OK Career Guide assessment as one of her transition assessments. And then we also, for our transition planning purposes and best practice, we needed to make sure that we were using a formal assessment, which is the TAG, that's our formal assessment. And then we also needed to be looking at some of her independent living skills. And so that's where the ELSA comes in, as it looks at her life skills and what she is able to accomplish at home, at work, and at school.
All right, so as Mallory mentioned, Selena took the OK Career Guide, the Career Interest Inventory, and she needed some accommodations to take that. So she had that read to her, and her top career interests were professional support services. That was her top one. That was number one. And then it was followed by business information management. And then she also had a few other ones with legal services, governance, but her top two were that professional support services and business information management. So you can, I saw in the chat, I love the discussions happening in the chat, and I saw that someone mentioned the ONET. So you can, your students can take these assessments and then you can use this information, go on the ONET and research careers, or there's also, you can research inside OK Career Guide, as we'll see on the next slide, what information it will show. So her top area was library assistant clerical. So you can see that, you can click on task and conditions and it will give you more information about the occupation. So it says like what this person may do. They're going to enter information into a computer, sort and replace return books, locate materials. That gives you an idea of what you would need to do, what jobs you would be doing. You can also see the salary and outlook, related occupations. I love that. The ONET can also do that. Those very similar there. So those are both great tools. And I mentioned OK College Start as well. That's another tool. We just happened to use this one for Selena, that she had the OK Career Guide, but they're both wonderful tools. So that's for Selena's library assistant clerical.
And then also, which I think is really nice too with this slide, it shows like the tasks and conditions. So like some things that she might be required to do in order to be a library assistant. And I think that can help with our transition planning as well. And so just a wonderful like little snapshot of what it takes to be a library assistant.
Yeah, because you know that, you know, sometimes what our students say they want to do, there's not a good match between what they say they want to do and then their skills. So like Mallory mentioned, this shows you, gives you some ideas of some skills, and those can be some wonderful annual transition goals that you're going to help them work on to help them obtain those skills that they need to be able to work where they want to work after school. Okay, so Mallory mentioned the transition goals, the post-secondary education, training, and employment, and I mentioned that the ICAP has post-secondary and workforce goals. So we do want to see alignment with those goals. Now, it's not going to be perfect because we know our students' interests may change. Hopefully by the time they're in 12th grade, they have a pretty good idea what they want to go into, but when they're first starting out, you know, it's going to change and we're updating it annually. So there may not be perfect alignment, but we at least want IEP teams to be aware of what's happening with the ICAP so that you can include and have as much alignment as possible with their post-secondary and annual goals in their IEP. So again, the goal for the ICAP is that students take a more active role and participate in meaningful and intentional career planning activities at an earlier age. So not the day before their IEPs due, we're asking them, hey, what do you want to do after high school? And, you know, I was guilty of that. I know how difficult it is. I know how busy you are, but hopefully with the ICAP, you're not doing this transition planning all on your own, and you can work together with the team to make this whole process more meaningful for our students.
So what's nice about the OK College Start and Career Guide, they're online, and so you can get those results from your student. They can email them to you, or their case manager on the OK College Start or Career Guide can get those to you as well. And so you can use those to build the students' post-secondary goals. And here is an example for Selena to show her post-secondary education goals for her transition plan, and then her workforce goals for her ICAP. And they're not exactly the same, and that's okay. Both of them are correct. So they could either be changeable too. But for our transition plan, we have upon graduation from high school, Selena will attend an online community college to take courses in business organization and management. We're a little more specific there. Those business organization and management classes would definitely help Selena to be more independent at work, and for her to learn a few other skills other than having on-the-job training there, so she'll come in with some background knowledge. And then on her post-secondary goal, her ICAP goal, her workforce goal, after she graduates high school, I will attend online community college. And so these are something that Selena said she wanted to do. This is something that her career is going to require her to do, to take some classes. And this is occurring after high school for both. They are occurring when she graduates. What is she doing right when she graduates, not while she's in high school? Lori, did you have anything to add there about her workforce goal, or her education goal, excuse me?
No, I think we're good. We'll talk about it on the next slide. Sorry, I was muting myself because my dog decided to try to get me to play ball with her in the middle of her presentation. So sorry about that.
So here is another example of the employment or the workforce goal. I said that wrong earlier, so pardon me. So post-secondary goal for employment. After graduation from high school, Selena will work as a library assistant part-time at a local library or school. So a little more specific. You don't necessarily have to be that specific, but it doesn't hurt. And then her workforce goal is that after she graduates from high school, she's going to have a career as a library assistant. So you see that they both connect. They're not exactly the same, but they do align, and her interests have stayed very similar. We like to see that they complement each other. And what's nice about those is those post-secondary goals for employment and those workforce goals really guide what services and annual goals that Selena is going to have. And so everybody is working on the same page to get Selena to work at a library when she graduates high school. So this is one part that is not necessarily included in the ICAP. This is the annual transition goals in the IEP. Sometimes they have different names. I call them annual transition goals, but in some literature and in some professionals will call them annual goals related to transition. And so they must be like SMART goals. They must include a condition, a specific behavior, and a criterion, just like any other academic or IEP goal. So just because they're transition doesn't mean that they don't have to follow that SMART goal format. You need to make sure that you are able to progress monitor on this goal. And in order to progress monitor their progress towards accomplishing that goal, it has to have those three things: a condition, behavior, and criterion. So measuring those progress. Now, I said that the ICAP doesn't necessarily have annual goals, but they still want you to measure progress towards those goals, their post-secondary goals, in some way.
Right, that's exactly right, Mallory.
Okay.
And you know, again, depending on what your district is using, that progress may look a little different. So there's nothing called, you know, annual transition goal in the ICAP, but it does say that you have to measure the progress towards the post-secondary and workforce goals. So there is, you know, a big focus on goal planning and short-term goals and long-term goals, which I'm so excited about because, you know, many of our students, they're just not able to set a goal, or maybe they can set a goal, but then they really don't know how to go about reaching that goal. So I'm so glad that we're making, you know, putting more intentional to the process of setting a goal. So if the student's developing an annual ICAP goal that's connected to their post-secondary and workforce goals, these goals could easily align with the education, training, and employment annual transition goals. I have seen in some of the tools that you know, again, our annual transition goals have to be SMART goals, as Mallory mentioned. And some of the goals that I've seen in the tools are more like, you know, I'm going to visit the career tech. So that would be more appropriate in, you know, to incorporate that piece into the ICAP as perhaps a coordinated activity, not an annual transition goal. So again, once you get in those tools and you see what it looks like in your district, you can decide, hey, is this going to fit in with an annual transition goal, or is this a coordinated activity? And on the next slide, you can kind of see what that looks like for Selena. So her 10th grade goal, so like it's like an annual goal. So she's going to volunteer at the library during the summer for at least 10 hours per week. So in OK Career Guide, you can select what goal type, whether it's a high school goal, which would make it an annual transition goal, or perhaps a coordinated activity, or a goal that will take place after high school, so the post-secondary goal. So that's just a sample of what it looks like. And then it also talks about the steps to achieve the goal. So really, this is where you can really get, you know, down into breaking down that goal into achievable steps. So for Selena, she's going to go to the library's website and look for information about volunteering. Step 2, she's going to visit the library in the spring, pick up a volunteer packet. Step 3, she's going to fill out a library volunteer application. And then step 4, she's going to application at the library. So she has a goal and she has a plan to reach that goal.
I'm going to go back one slide. I think this is wonderful. And like Lori said, sometimes these really relate to our transition services or our coordinated set of activities within the transition plan. And it's totally fine if they're the same thing. I just really like how ICAP breaks that down into steps, and then they've got the deadline. And I think that that's a wonderful like tool that it has in the software.
Yeah, so again, you can see how those steps could align with, you know, you could include those with your transition coordinated activities.
Yes, Monica asked on the chat where we would put these steps. These steps go in the ICAP, or you can put them as transition services or coordinated activities within the transition plan. So when we're talking about building those annual transition goals for the transition plan, these are where our transition assessments can really help out as well. So the TAG is a skills assessment, and the TAG again stands for Transition Assessment and Goal Generator. And it provides a profile of the student's strengths and limitations. And so the strengths are great things to have in that student's present levels of performance. I have a child who's on an IEP, and that's one of my things is I want people to see how great she is too. I want somebody to show me her strengths. And sometimes we don't know those strengths until we give them an assessment. And so the TAG will provide some of those strengths for you to talk about. And so for Selena, it's interacting with others. Both she felt that way, and the teacher felt that way as well. It also gives us information on her areas of need, which we should be using to build her IEP goals. And so for Selena, her areas of need are goal setting and attainment, which we're working on that a lot with the ICAP goal steps. And it also may need to be a focus on her TAG, on her transition plan. And then also she needs some employment skills. She needs to be employed somehow. And if you think back to those ICAP steps, you're really working her through a way to get involved. Even if it's a non-paid position, that still helps her to accomplish being employed in the future. So taking those TAG results, and the TAG is really nice too, because it will output some goals that you could use and put straight into the transition plan. But I always like to change them up a little bit to be a little more individualized to Selena. So Selena, to help her accomplish her post-secondary goal and to work towards that progress, she's going to report to an adult of her choice 3 unpaid jobs that she can complete for family members, and identify how 2 or more skills learned by doing those jobs can be applied to a paid job with 100% accuracy as measured by a checklist. That was a mouthful. But essentially, we want to make sure that she is, even if it's an unpaid job, that she's still learning important skills on that unpaid job that will help her in the future when she has a library assistant job to be successful and to be able to keep her job later on. We can also have goals in education and training area. The TAG does both employment and education. So this job she's going, or excuse me, this goal, she is going to, after completing 2 job shadowing experiences, which could be in the library or maybe somewhere else, Selena will present a presentation to her class about the things she liked and the things that she disliked about the experience with 100% accuracy as measured by a teacher-made rubric. It doesn't have to necessarily be in the field that she likes or that she identified. It's important that Selena is identifying the things that she likes and dislikes. And what if she dislikes being in the library? Maybe she had this idea of what the library was, which was reading books or getting to play with the toys at the library. Maybe it was something a little different than actually being a library assistant, but that's really, we don't know that until we give her the opportunity. And so with her annual transition goal, we're making sure that she's actually doing those things and that she's able to express what she likes and dislikes about that job. For independent living, and I know this was kind of a hot topic on the chat there for a little bit, Selena's independent living goals, we kind of focused on the ELSA results. And the ELSA is not a formal assessment, just like the Casey Life Skills is not a formal assessment. But because we had another formal assessment, we didn't need to make sure that our independent living assessment was formal. It's totally fine if it's informal. And it's okay if things are informal. That doesn't mean that they're bad. Informal assessments can provide us great information. So for Selena, she took this ELSA assessment, and if you see that it's like numbered 1 through, I think it's through 3, if they can do the skill or not. And it's like a never, rarely, sometimes, always. So I guess it goes through, yeah, 3. And so on this area, this task-related skills, has a little bit of trouble caring for her work and living area. And so we took that and made it into a goal. And I thought, when I made this goal, I didn't realize, but on her ICAP assessment a couple of slides ago, it said something about being a library assistant, her assessment about being a library assistant and having to put things back where they belonged. And so her annual transition goal relates right back to her ICAP results too. So I thought that that was pretty cool. So when assigned a classroom job, Selena will locate and return all work materials belongings to their proper storage area 4 out of 5 times in a week. And then here's another goal that we could have from Selena's ELSA results. And so this also identified that she had a hard time developing personal goals and working towards those personal goals. So then we have another goal that focuses on setting and attaining goals, which is something that the tag said and something that the ICAP assessments work on as well.
All right, great. Thank you so much, Mallory. I noticed in the chat, there's some wonderful conversations about assessments. In addition to the resources that were listed in the chat, you can also check out the transition assessment for students with mild moderate disabilities and transition assessment for students with severe profound disabilities, Pepper modules located within EdPlan in Pepper. So that's some other additional resources for you if you're new to transition. So the alignment of courses and transition services is another important piece. So hopefully you're starting to see that the ICAP isn't something else that you have to do. It's really, there's a lot of alignment. So the intentional sequence of courses that's in the ICAP process should be able to help IEP teams when they're developing that appropriate course of study and transition services that align with students' post-secondary goals. So if you're teaching this year and you're writing transition plans, you've noticed that course of study has been broken up in EdPlan now. And that was one of the major reasons to, to show that alignment with the intentional sequence of courses and to make sure that the courses that the students are taking is helping them get to where they want to be. Again, consider work-based learning opportunities and instruction in self-determination and soft skills. Special education is all about that specially designed instruction. So it might, again, for most of our students, they're going to be able to participate and do what the Gen Ed's doing for ICAP, but we always want to be looking at where do they need additional assistance, where's that specialized instruction? If they need some, specific lesson or how to lead their IEP, be able to get a job and keep a job. So they need instruction in soft skills. We don't want to forget our related service things. Another important piece of that course of study is the participation in Oklahoma's Promise. Students have to enroll their 10th grade year, certain requirements that students must meet to be able to be eligible for OK Promise. And OK Promise is the where if you qualify, your tuition will be paid for. So it's important that our students that could potentially qualify have that opportunity. So we need to be having those conversations, and you can visit. I recommend you talk to your school counselor or admin person who knows more about that, or visit the OK Promise website to learn more about those requirements. There are certain course codes and courses that students have to take to be eligible for OK Promise. So we need to be familiar with that. Okay. Also in the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, it talks about transition services. So I think we've covered most of this already, but just wanted to give you that definition that it could include things like instruction, related services, community experiences, employment and other post-school adult living objectives, daily living skills, and provision of a functional vocational evaluation if the team determines that that's needed. All right, so as far as the requirements in the ICAP for work experiences, students must participate in at least one work experience, and that can include service learning. So at least one time prior to graduation. So again, the class of 2023 must have participated in at least one work experience. We really, want to emphasize community experiences and internships. Those are highly recommended. That's difficult right now. You may not be able to go out into to the community. So if you can set up some of those opportunities, at school, if you're in school, there's even some resources for virtual. So if you need more assistance with that, you can reach out to us. But hopefully, at some point your students will be able to get out into the community and participate if they can do that safely. Some of our districts have internship opportunities that they can participate in their junior or senior year. So we want to make sure that students on IEPs have the opportunity to participate in those internships. And that, that we're all about equity. So not just students with disabilities, but all of our other students need to have the opportunity to do that. Do want to mention that students on IEPs who participate in work study through our partners, the Department of Rehabilitation Services, they may receive credit for an internship if the work study that they are participating in meets the requirements that are outlined in the internship FAQ that was developed by our ICAP team. So, that you can talk to your administration if your district's participating in a work study and determine if your work study would meet those requirements for an internship.
So here is an example of what Selena's course of study might look like within her IEP. When we had C's, we were able to pick courses, and we're working towards that right now. Isn't that right, Lori? There's a new update to Ed Plan. I can have her talk about that in a second.
It's broken up 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th. They enter the titles of the courses. It's already in there. Okay.
So this is what it would kind of look like. And so they enter in their courses each time. And so for Selena, she's, taking her 4 credits of English. She's got her math, and I use the guidance on the Oklahoma State Department of Education to determine which courses and how many she would have to take in each area. And if you notice the little star, the asterisk shows things that are aligned to her post-secondary goals to help her accomplish those after she leaves high school. And so sometimes those courses are made up within the special education coursework, and then sometimes they are those internships that qualify for work study credits. And then there's also some STEM courses or family consumer science courses to really build up her transition skills. And this is a course of study, or an intentional sequence of courses is what the ICAP calls it. And it is on OK Career Guide. This is where this one came from, but it's essentially the same thing. It just starts at 7th grade and works its way up. And they even have courses for them to plan out their freshman and sophomore years of college, which I think is pretty cool. And it just gives the subject area, and it actually has drop downs that you can actually insert courses into. We're going to end with a couple of resources. If you want to learn more about transition, please go and check out some of the webinars that Oklahoma State Department and Special Education have completed together on secondary transition. I know Lori just did one of those last week, so there are those webinars. There's also modules within Pepper, which is on the Ed Plan. website, and we have secondary transition. We have ones that are designated for transition assessments for students with mild moderate, and then again for students with moderate to significant disabilities. And then there's even one on interagency collaboration during the transition process.
Okay, and about those webinars, it says on this slide that they'll be located on the OSDE secondary transition webpage. They're not quite there yet. Sometimes it can take a few days to get things posted on our webpage, but I have uploaded both of those webinars to EdPlan, and if you go to the documents section, you scroll down to documents, and then you go to the state tab. You can find the webinar from the 22nd of September, and that was an introduction to secondary transition planning. So it covered all of the things Mallory talked to you about today, but in a little more detail. The PowerPoint is there, as well as a recording, the link to the recording. And then the one on the 24th was actually in EdPlan, taking you through how to develop a compliant IEP transition plan in EdPlan. So it's going to focus more on that functionality piece of where the different pieces of the transition plan are entered in EdPlan. So those are posted in EdPlan at this time. If you have questions about ICAP or transition planning, you can contact me. You can email me. That's probably the best, fastest way to get a hold of me, but you can also call the State Department. If you have general just questions, if you're new to special ed or you just have general questions about special education or IDEA, you can also call our main line, and that number is listed there for you, 405-521-3351. We also, I mentioned OK Edge earlier, and we have some ICAP resources for students with disabilities on OK Edge. There's an ICAP IEP comparison document. There's an ICAP IEP frequently asked questions. And then we have a business and education partnership toolkit. And within that toolkit, that's for everyone, general education. But within that toolkit, you'll see references to what this would look like for students with disabilities. There's some information there about like accommodations at the workplace. So those resources are there. And then you can also find that internship FAQ on OK Edge. If you have specific information about ICAP, you can take this information back to your district administrators if we have administrators joining us today. If you have general ICAP questions, it would be best for you to reach out to Marissa Lightsey. She is the Executive Director of College and Career Readiness, and there's her email. We have Chelsea Hunt. She's the Executive Director of Work-Based Learning and Industry Partnerships. So if you want to find out more about that, you can reach out to her. And then Dr. Shelley Ellis is our Deputy Superintendent. That's over ICAP. So I put those on there for you as well. If your district's new, you're like, what's this ICAP thing? You can pass along their contact information.
I know that was one of the questions on the chat box was about ICAP. So those questions might need to be directed towards some of these contacts.
Yeah, so again, general ICAP questions, you're gonna go through to Marissa. ICAP for students with disabilities, you can reach out to me.
Here is the OU Zero Center contact. You can email me at my personal email, which is just my first and last name at OU. Or you can email us at the zerocenter@ou.edu. That's usually me behind the scenes there, but it does get answered quickly. We have a couple of people who answer emails on that account. And so if you have any transition related questions, please direct them to the Zero Center and we can hopefully point you in the right direction. Here's a link, a QR code to our website. It will direct you straight there, but you can visit us online, and our website offers a couple of things. We have free transition education curriculums and materials and resources on there for free. We have transition assessments that are free on our website. There are professional development PowerPoints that we have done in the past, whether it's through our partnership with Oklahoma State Department of Education or through other avenues like other conferences or other professional development that we've held. And those are free. There are some on transition assessments if you want to click through. They're all up there to get some more information about them. And then we also have the transition assessment and goal generator, which does cost money. There's one thing on our website that does cost money, but it is $3 per student, and that includes all 3 versions of that assessment.
And one other thing I just want to mention that, you know, if you're new to special ed or you taught elementary and you've moved up to middle school or high school, this can be a little overwhelming. You know, I have my master's degree with an emphasis in secondary transition planning, and I'm still learning new things every day. And I'm sure Mallory, she just finished her doctorate, and I'm sure she can say, you know, the same. So we provide all these resources to you, but I do just want to throw out there that if you're new and you're just not sure where to get started, reach out to me. I can give you kind of a step-by-step, try this assessment with your students, get back to me. You know, I've been doing that with some other special educators who have reached out, and I'm happy to do that. Sometimes we just need to break it down. So keep that in mind. We do have a few minutes left. So we want to, at this time, open it up to questions. You guys have been doing a fabulous job in the chat, having a dialogue, and I see that a lot of the questions have been answered, but we're just going to kind of scroll down, and I think Jesse's on. If you see any questions we missed, you can let us know. I do see a question about the ICAP and the service learning. So this person says that she was under the impression that students must do service learning each year of high school. So everything I mentioned with ICAP, again, that's ultimately district decisions. So the state provides guidance. In the legislation, it's one time by graduation, but many districts are, you know, are requiring it one time per year. That's fabulous. We want to encourage that. So with everything we mentioned, you want to make sure that your district may have different guidelines. So get with your administrator and your ICAP team to find that out. So it sounds like in your district, it's required each year, and that's fabulous. Okay, I see someone else that, you know, transitions going from 8th grade to high school, what that will look like. And they've started ICAP, but don't have actual student data. So again, it's gonna take some time. The ICAP doesn't have to be started until 9th grade, but the transition plan's developed in 8th grade. So if you want to reach out to me, I can give you some suggestions of or Mallory can do the same, some great assessments for those 8th graders to get you started.
And if you want to start transition even earlier, we have some resources for that as well.
Absolutely, because we know the earlier the better. Someone was asking about a professional development certificate, and it's my understanding that when OTI is over, you'll complete your evaluation, and then at that time, you'll be able to get your certificates of attendance. So make sure you complete your evaluation. Yeah, and that's what Kim just said. So when OTI ends on the 30th, everyone will receive an email with the evaluation, and once you submit, you'll be able to print your own certificates. And I agree with you, the Zero Center is a great resource.
I had posted on the chat, if you have families and students who are Spanish speaking, we're giving out free tag credits, and I put the email address. Balkas is her dissertation. She's trying to make sure that the tag is validated and appropriate in Spanish for our students who speak Spanish and families. And so the only way we can do that is to get a really large sample of students and families who speak Spanish. So if you do have students that you would like to have tag credits for, if you can email Belkis, and it's bcpraslin@ou.edu. Or you can email the Zero Center if you forget that. You can email the Zero Center and I'll make sure that that gets forwarded to her.
And someone posted in the chat that you can contact me for tag credits. I do have a few left. I'm running a little bit low, but we contract with the Zero Center to provide high quality transition trainings, and I had a few left over last year, and we sent out an email for the through our listserv, and I've had a great response to that, and I've been giving away tag credits. So first come, first serve. If you shoot me an email and let me know how many credits you need. Usually a good idea is like your caseload plus maybe like 5 more. So if you have 25 kids, ask me for 30 credits in case you get some move-ins. And again, that'll just be first come, first serve. Also, Mallory, do you want to talk about the upcoming trainings that we have real quick?
Yes, so with our Zero Center and Oklahoma State Department of Education partnership, we're offering 14 trainings throughout this 2021 school year. We have 9 of them scheduled right now for this semester, and through our listservs, we're going to provide information on how those are going to be provided. Right now, they're going to be provided online, but they cover a variety of transition topics, from transition assessment to transition planning to student involvement. And then we also have 2 that will happen in the spring that are transition information for people who are not special educators. And so we're going to break it down for those who are not in the special education world or new to transition.
And I just, oh, sorry, Mallory.
Go ahead, Lori.
This is Lori. I just wanted to say, I just dropped the link to the Oklahoma State Department of Education website. If you can sign up for our listserv, if you go to that link and then scroll down to newsletters, and there's something about staying connected, and you can enter your email address, and that way you'll get all the information. You may get more information than you want, but it'll say like transition and other areas of PD too. So when we have behavior, dyslexia, or any other topics of PD, you'll be notified.
The tag was, there was a question on here. They asked if it's for students with significant disabilities. The original tag is not designed for students with significant disabilities, but we have the tag alternate, the tag A, and that is designed for students with significant cognitive disabilities. We are in the last part of field testing, and so I posted the link on there. If you want to make some extra money and you want your family members and your students to make a little extra cash too, you can help us out by joining our last set of pilots studies for the tag alternate. So I posted that link on there as well.
All right, wonderful. Well, we just want to thank you for attending, and we appreciate you being here. Remember that you'll get all of the materials will be emailed out to you. So thank you all, and reach out to us if you have any questions, and have a great rest of your day. We have our next session, our next English session will be starting at 1:30 p.m. So we hope to see you there, and thank you all.
Thank you.